Welcome to Heart Over Gold, the channel where love, kindness, and humanity shine brighter than any fortune. In today's story, as Harry Rupert prepares for his lavish wedding to Kira Landrum at the Balneario Los Arenas Hotel in Valencia, his world is about to be shattered. Marina Beltran, in a humble apartment with her son Ben, is preparing him for the event. Ben, who bears an uncanny resemblance to Harry, is about to reveal a truth Harry has spent years avoiding. Ben is his son. The wedding, meant to be a triumph, turns into a dramatic confrontation as Marina steps forward, revealing the hidden truth. What follows is a journey of betrayal, emotion, and the beginning of a long overdue reconciliation between a father, a son, and the woman who kept the secret. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments, and keep up with our latest stories. The grand reveal of the wedding venue at the Balneario Los Arenas Hotel was alive with activity in preparation for the much-anticipated wedding. The refreshing sea breeze flowed through the open terraces, blending with the sweet scent of orange blossoms decorating every corner. Staff moved with efficiency, setting white tablecloths, placing crystal glassware, and arranging fresh lilies as centerpieces. Harry Rupert strolled among them, a look of contentment on his face, carefully inspecting each detail as though it were a high-stakes business pitch. The hum of the workers around him mixed with the distant sounds of the Mediterranean waves and the pop of firecrackers from the Fallas festival taking place in Valencia. In a simple apartment in the Carmen neighborhood, Marina Beltran adjusted her son's tie in front of an old mirror. The stark contrast between the two worlds was undeniable. There were no extravagant decorations or luxury here, just walls adorned with family photos, cameras on shelves, and a wooden table holding Ben's medical papers. "I can't believe we're doing this," the boy muttered, as he gazed at himself in the mirror. His black suit highlighted his youthful features, and the likeness to Harry was undeniable. "You're nervous, aren't you?" Marina asked gently. Ben nodded, his eyes lowering. "We're going to ruin his perfect wedding," he whispered. Marina corrected him firmly. "We're not ruining anything. We're just telling the truth." Meanwhile, at the hotel, Harry was hosting a pre-wedding dinner for a few of his business associates. Tables were filled with glasses of red wine, delicate tapas, and discussions about investments. Harry raised his glass with pride, certain that tonight would seal his victory. "Tomorrow will be unforgettable," he said in a booming voice, and the guests echoed their agreement with cheers and laughter. But in the corner of the room, Kira Landrum, his fiancée, observed the scene with a troubled look on her face. She had spent the past days poring over documents that confirmed her worst fear: Ben's existence. She had kept a hidden file in her hotel room filled with photos, clippings, and medical records. Her mind was torn between the need to protect her position and the fear of losing everything if the truth came to light. The following day arrived, bright and festive, with a clear blue sky. The hotel stood ready, while in the city, the Knights awaited the final night of the Fallas festival. Inside the main hall, staff made the last adjustments to the flowers and lighting. Harry issued orders with confidence, convinced that the plan to humiliate Marina was on track. "I want her to have a front row seat," he told his assistant Adrian Moya. "I want her to see everything." Adrian nodded, though doubt lingered in his mind. Meanwhile, Marina helped Ben put on his cufflinks. "You look just like him," she whispered, as she adjusted the last detail of his attire. Ben, still unsure, looked at his reflection once more. "It's like I'm seeing myself as him in 20 years, he said quietly. Marina's heart ached as she gazed at him, knowing the resemblance would be impossible for Harry and the guests to miss. "Remember," she reminded him gently, "we're not here to destroy anything. We're here to tell the truth." As the guests began to arrive at the hotel, Kira remained alone in her room, staring at the dossier in her hands. The photos of Ben, so strikingly similar to Harry, gnawed at her. Her hands trembled as she shut the file and tucked it away in a drawer. She stared at her reflection in the mirror, her eyes filled with unspoken tears. "If this comes out, I'll lose everything," she murmured quietly. Outside, the soft melodies of a string quartet filled the air as the first toasts were heard inside the hall. The evening promised to be long and dazzling, but beneath the surface of perfection, a storm was brewing. The sound of church bells rang through the air as guests entered the hotel, unaware of the drama about to unfold. The bells echoed through the center of Valencia, blending with the gentle waves lapping at the shore near the Balneario Los Arenas Hotel. The afternoon was bright and clear, and a fragrant breeze carrying the scent of orange blossoms swept through the open lobby, where staff placed floral arrangements and the string quartet practiced soft, graceful music. Harry Rupert strode through the lobby with a confident pace, exchanging greetings with two partners and a journalist, who offered him an admiring handshake. He wore a tailored suit, a gleaming tie pin, and the air of a man used to being in control. He stopped next to the counter, checking his phone for the guest arrival schedule. Adrian Moya stood beside him, carrying a folder, scribbling down last-minute details. "I want to make sure Marina gets a front-row seat," Harry instructed. "She should see the whole ceremony." Adrian hesitated for a moment. "Sir," he said softly, "if the press finds out your ex-wife is here, it could cause problems. The photographers are already asking about surprises, and I'm worried." Harry cut him off with a slight shake of his head. "This is my business, not theirs," he said, his voice firm. "Do it." Adrian reluctantly nodded, his unease palpable. Marina and Ben entered through the main doors, and time seemed to slow for a moment. The light from outside framed their figures as they walked in. Ben wore a dark suit and a simple tie, his youth only slightly masking the tension in his posture. He looked both proud and nervous, standing straighter than usual. Harry noticed them from a distance. It wasn't an immediate recognition, but as he watched, the familiarity grew within him like a rising tide. First, it was Marina's silhouette, then her jawline, and finally the boy's eyes. Those eyes, so familiar, seemed to belong to a time he thought he had left behind. Harry's heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, everything seemed to fade into silence. He took a step forward, then another, unsure whether to approach or retreat. Whispers spread among the guests. Curiosity turned to electric whispers. "Who are they?" a woman asked, fanning herself. "She looks like someone from old pictures," a man whispered to his wife. A waiter passed with a tray of glasses, and the atmosphere vibrated with tension. The flashes of two photographers blinked briefly, caught off guard by the unexpected scene. Kira Landrum descended the main staircase in a simple yet elegant ivory dress. Her gaze swept across the scene and landed on Harry, then Ben. She recognized the resemblance immediately, and something twisted in her stomach. Marina's hand tightened around Ben's wrist, her touch warm against his quickening pulse. "Stay calm," she whispered, keeping her voice steady. Harry approached, but only close enough for them to hear. Marina nodded, her voice firm but polite. "Good afternoon," she greeted him. Ben stepped forward slightly, his eyes locking with Harry's. The resemblance was no longer a suspicion. It was undeniable. A string on the violin snapped, and the quartet paused for a moment, long enough for the entire lobby to hold its breath. "Welcome," Harry managed to say, but the word felt foreign on his tongue. "We can talk somewhere quieter." "We came to sit as guests at the ceremony," Marina replied slowly. Ensuring there was no ambiguity. "We'll talk later," Harry muttered. But Marina's son didn't avert his gaze. His eyes held a question, a challenge, and a burning curiosity. Adrian appeared beside Harry, leaning in discreetly. "The press is in the side garden," he murmured. "If they see you together, they'll start asking questions." Harry remained silent for a moment, a muscle twitching in his cheek. "Make sure no one gets too close," he said coldly, "and make sure they get a front-row seat." Adrian swallowed, nodding. "Yes, sir," he replied, his discomfort showing. He turned to direct a coordinator toward their seats, casting one last uneasy glance at Ben. The music picked up again, softer this time, as a waiter offered Marina a glass of water. She accepted it, offering him a quiet, "Thank you." The cool glass steadied her hand. Ben took a deep breath, finding his balance again as the air filled with the soft scent of the sea. The golden sunlight filtered through the windows, casting stripes of light on the tiled floor. As the truth loomed closer, the murmur of the crowd turned to a roar when Marina stepped forward. The guests in formal wear looked at each other, surprised that the silence in the lobby was now a powerful force in the main hall. The string quartet had resumed its melody, but the musicians gradually lowered the volume, unable to sustain an atmosphere that was already contaminated with tension. In the golden dome, theelights reflected glimmers on the crystal glasses, and photographers from social magazines focused quickly, aware that something extraordinary was happening. The echo of the resemblance between Ben and Harry remained in the air. Some guests whispered with incredulous gestures, while others took discreet photos with their mobile phones. Marina felt the moment had come. She had spent years keeping silent, swallowing the truth to protect her son. But that night, she could no longer hide it. She looked at Ben, who stood firm beside her, and squeezed his hand. Marina's voice rose clear, although her heart was beating violently. "This is your son." The words echoed in the room like thunder, and the music stopped abruptly. The echo spread through the walls of the hall so loud that even those in the back heard it clearly. The murmur transformed into muffled exclamations, into a-contained chaos of looks that went from Harry to Benand, from Ben to Marina. The boy stood upright, although he felt his legs trembling. The photographers began to fire their flashes relentlessly. The white glare flooded the hall, capturing tense faces and incredulous gestures. Exeter, standing near the improvised altar, froze. His mouth barely opened, but no words came out. He looked at Marina with a gesture of disbelief, and then at Ben, unable to deny what his own eyes confirmed. The silence lasted only a few seconds until the guests began to talk all at once. "It can't be. He's identical. Why did she never say anything?" The noise grew until it became a roar of voices that collided with the vaulted ceiling. A journalist took the opportunity to raise his camera and record live. The image of Harry paralyzed next to the boy who was his teenage reflection became a public spectacle. Harry finally reacted. He took a step forward, his breathing ragged. "What does this mean?" he asked in a broken voice. Marina didn't lower her gaze. "It means what you see. Ben is your son." Harry swallowed, but he couldn't say anything else. The resemblance was irrefutable, and Ben's eyes, so identical to his own, disarmed him. Then an unexpected voice broke the silence. Kira Canyares, from one of the steps, with a pale face, held the gaze of everyone present. "I knew about this the whole time." The murmur changed tone. Now the looks were directed at her, who was slowly descending with her ivory dress shining under the lights. Her confession fell like a new blow, and the guest's discomfort became even more evident. Harry turned abruptly to her. "What did you say?" Kirali took a deep breath. "I hired an investigator months ago. I found out everything about Marina and the boy. I was afraid that if you knew before the wedding, you would leave me." Her voice trembled, but she held herself with pride. The flashes fired again. The chaos intensified. Some guests got up from their chairs. Others looked for the exit, and the musicians discreetly abandoned their instruments. Ben lowered his gaze, feeling the ground move under his feet. Marina caressed his shoulder, whispering for him to breathe, that he was not alone. Harry clenched his fists, his face distorted. His eyes moved between Corrali and Marina, between betrayal and the revealed truth. Rage rose up his throat like fire, and in a strong, almost shouted voice, he uttered the words no one expected to hear. "The wedding is cancelled." The announcement echoed in the hall like a final bell. Guests got up en masse, some murmuring with discomfort, others taking the opportunity to leave in a hurry. Waiters left trays on the tables and retreated, confused. The string quartet put away their instruments in silence. The grand ceremony that promised to be the wedding of the year had crumbled in a matter of minutes. Corrali dropped the small purse she was carrying and let it fall to the floor. The dry sound of the metal clasp echoed on the marble. Her lips tightened and tears began to run down her face. Harry looked at her with a mixture of fury and disappointment. "You hid the truth from me," he said in a low voice. But everyone heard him. "How did you expect me to marry you?" Kirala tried to approach, extending her hand. "I did it out of fear. I didn't want to lose you." But Harry looked away, unable to keep listening. Ben, still in the center of the hall, looked at his mother with anguish. "Mom, this was a mistake," he whispered. But Marina took his hand firmly. "No, son, it was necessary." Photographers captured every gesture, every tear, every word. The chaos could no longer be stopped. Adrienne appeared near the entrance, trying to contain the journalists. "No cameras allowed here," he repeated in a firm voice. Although he knew it was useless, the damage was done. The scandal was already spreading faster than any previous rumor. The air became thick, charged with tension and burning glances. The hotel, which was supposed to be the scene of a celebration, had transformed into a battlefield of emotions and broken truths. Hector remained standing, his face hardened, looking at Marina and Ben. He knew that nothing would ever be the same again. A path forward. The doors of the hall closed, leaving only the protagonists in front of the naked truth. The echo of the guests' voices still resonated in the hallways like a distant rumor that little by little faded with the sound of footsteps and the clicks of cameras moving away toward the street. Inside the hotel's private restaurant, the silence became thick, broken only by the clinking of abandoned glasses on the tables and the tired sigh of a waiter who was picking up withered flowers without daring to look up. The echo of Harry's shout still vibrated on the walls. "The wedding is cancelled." That phrase, thrown in fury, had demolished the facade of success and pride that he had built for years. Now, with a loose tie and clenched hands, he seemed like a different, more vulnerable man. Trapped between bewilderment and the need for explanations, Marina and Ben sat at one of the tables in the back. Under a dim lamp that barely illuminated their faces, Harry stood in front of them as if he didn't know where to start. "Why now?" he asked at last in a grave voice. Marina held his gaze without blinking. "Because we couldn't wait any longer. Because he had the right to know the truth." Harry closed his eyes for an instant as if the answer physically hurt him. Ben, with his arms crossed over his chest, looked at him with a mixture of anger and defiance. "And you?" the boy said. "Where were you when we needed you?" Harry clenched his jaw. "I didn't know you existed," Marina interrupted him harshly. You didn't know because you never asked. Because when I wanted to talk about family, you only heard numbers, contracts, and meetings. You went after your company, and I was left alone. Marina's voice trembled, but she did not lose her firmness. The boy looked at both of them, feeling that each word was a fragment of a puzzle that was finally being put together in front of him. Silence fell again for a few seconds. Outside, the firecrackers of the fallest thundered in the distance, reminding them that the city was still celebrating. While inside that room, a different kind of battle was being fought. Ben hit the table with his fist, and the dry sound made the glasses vibrate. "I don't need your money. I need you to understand what you lost," he exclaimed with contained tears. His voice broke, and for a moment his teenage pride crumbled, revealing the real wound. Marina tried to calm him, placing her hand on his shoulder. "Son, calm down." But he shook his head. "No, Mom, he has to hear it. He has to understand what it means to grow up without a dad. To see all my friends with theirs at soccer games, at school meetings, while I invented excuses to explain your absence, Harry." The word "your absence" sounded like a blow, and Harry felt his breath catch. With a firm step, Lucia, Marina's friend, appeared at the door. She was still wearing a white coat under her jacket and a briefcase hanging from her shoulder. She had arrived in a hurry after Marina's call. "Sorry to interrupt, but this can't wait," she said seriously. The three of them looked at her in surprise. "Ben needs immediate medical attention. The results are clear. His heart requires urgent monitoring and care." The silence became even heavier, and the air filled with a new gravity. Harry fell into a chair, resting his forehead in his hand. "My condition," he murmured. "He inherited it?" Lucia nodded calmly. "Yes, and it's not something we can ignore. It requires changes in routine, medication, and frequent checkups. If we face it together, there is hope." Marina squeezed her son's hand while he looked away. His breathing accelerated. Outside the room, Adrian was trying to contain the journalists who were still waiting for news. "No statements," he repeated firmly as he closed the door to the hallway and diverted the curious. Inside, on the other hand, the atmosphere was so intimate that it seemed like a confessional. Caral had disappeared through a side exit of the hotel with tears in her eyes and a hasty suitcase. Her story with Harry had ended at that very instant. With no possibility of return, Ben broke the silence. "I don't want you to treat me like a project or like a debt. I just want you to be my dad." Harry looked up, and in those young eyes he recognized the same intensity he had felt in his youth, the same struggle to be heard. "You want to be with you," he replied in a hoarse voice. "I don't know how to do it, but I want to trust." Marina watched him with incredulity, still unable to trust him completely. But for the first time, she saw a glimmer of sincerity. Lucia put away her papers and closed her briefcase. "We must take him to the hospital as soon as possible," she said in a professional tone. "There's no time to lose." Marina nodded immediately while she caressed Ben's hair. The boy, although scared, accepted with a tired gesture. Harry stood up, ready to accompany them. The noise of the city continued to explode with gunpowder and music. But in that room, the biggest explosion was that of a truth that after 15 years could no longer be hidden, a new beginning. The intense aroma of coffee filled the air as Marina, Harry, and Ben sat at the same table for the first time. The place with its Baroque decoration of high walls and crystal lamps seemed like a refuge outside of time. Around them, tourist couples commented in low voices about their routes through the city. A group of students ordered horsata and fartons, and at the bar, a waiter skillfully served glasses of sweet wine to two older ladies who were arguing about the musseltas. Life in Valencia continued its course, but for the three of them, that meeting was a world apart. The memory of the hospital consultation was still fresh. Dr. Morales' voice had been clear. Ben would need lifelong care, and the only way to cope was with family support. Marina had insisted on taking a break, and Lucia had suggested a quiet place to talk. That was how they ended up in that downtown cafe, famous for its gatherings with a table in the most secluded corner surrounded by mirrors and paintings that reflected a deceptive calm. Harry broke the silence. "I remember the first time I came in here," he said, looking at the painted ceiling. "I was young. I had no money. I ordered a coffee with milk and stayed for hours dreaming about what I would be one day." Marina raised an eyebrow. "Dreaming of empires, not families," she replied softly. Harry sighed, looking down. Ben, who was distractedly stirring the sugar in his glass of horchata, looked up. "Did you really come here?" he asked in a neutral tone. "Yes," Harry replied. "And I promised myself I would come back when I was successful, and here I am, although not in the way I expected." The boy pressed his lips together, hesitating. Marina encouraged him with a look. "Tell him what you think," she whispered. Ben took a deep breath. "I don't want you to look at me as a symbol of your success or your mistakes. I just want you to be my dad. Can you?" The question hung in the air. Harry shifted in his chair, surprised by the frankness. "I want to try," he said slowly, "even if I don't know how." A waiter approached to place a plate of pumpkin fritters sprinkled with sugar on the table. "Here you are," he said courteously, and Marina thanked him with a cordial "Thank you." That everyday gesture brought some normalcy back to the scene. Ben took one of the fritters but barely took a bite. He was nervous, and the food tasted bland. "I don't want empty promises," he added, looking at his father. "If you say you're going to be there, I want you to follow through." Harry nodded seriously. "I understand. I won't talk about money or empires. I'll talk about being present. That's what you want, right?" Ben hesitated for a few seconds, and then nodded in a way that showed he meant it. Marina watched them in silence with a mixture of distrust and relief. She had waited for this moment for years, and seeing it finally happen filled her with a contradictory emotion. The cafe clock marked 6. Outside, the city was preparing for another burst of fireworks, and the shadows of dusk filtered through the high windows. The murmur of nearby conversations created a backdrop that made the talk at their table more intimate. Harry leaned toward Ben. "I'd like to know more about you. What are you interested in besides photography?" The boy hesitated. "Programming. I'm working on a project to monitor heartbeats. Something that could help me and others." Harry looked at him with surprise, almost with pride. "That's admirable." "I'd love to see it," Marina intervened. "Don't try to appropriate his achievements, Harry. He's made it this far without you." The phrase sounded harsh, but Harry accepted it with a slow nod. "I know," he said, "and that's why I want to start being here now." Ben leaned back into his chair. "The science fair is in a week. If you really want to be here, come. Don't hide behind your meetings." The tension grew again. Harry looked at him firmly. "I'll go," he replied, "even if I have to cancel everything else." Ben raised his eyebrows incredulously. "Really?" Harry nodded. Marina watched him, trying to decipher if this promise would be just one more among many. At that moment, Adrian appeared at the door. He looked tired and approached the table discreetly. "Sir," he said, "the press is still insisting. I've tried to keep them away, but they won't stop chasing the story." Harry gestured for him to calm down. "Make sure they don't bother Marina or Ben, and don't make up excuses. If they ask, tell them the truth that I was with my family." Adrian looked at him in surprise but nodded. "As you wish," he replied, and withdrew with a brief gesture toward Marina, as if apologizing for all the chaos. Marina took a sip of her coffee and gently placed the cup on the saucer. "I never thought I'd hear you say that word," she commented softly. Harry smiled melancholically. "Me neither, but I'm saying it now because I feel it." Ben watched the scene in silence, trying to believe in that change. The atmosphere of the cafe became warmer as the minutes passed. Lucia called Marina to ask how they were. "We're fine," she replied, looking at her son and Harry. "For now, we're fine." Ben took another fritter and finished it this time. His eyes, although still full of caution, softened a little. Marina rested her elbows on the table and looked at her son. "Do you want to tell him yourself what you expect?" Ben took a deep breath. "I just want you to be honest, Dad. Don't make promises you don't keep. If you say you'll be at the fair, I want to see you there." Harry looked at him intently. "I promise." The murmur of the cafe filled the space again, and for an instant the three of them felt part of the city's normally. Outside, the fireworks began to sound and the colored lights reflected in the high windows. Ben smiled slightly, as if within that roar he had found a little peace, a promise kept. The Louise Vives Institute was buzzing with students, posters, and projects, while the phallus continued to light up the city. The hallways were decorated with colorful posters, cables connecting laptops and improvised tables with models and experiments. Entire families walked among the stands, applauding the young people who enthusiastically explained their ideas. The air smelled of a mixture of freshly made churros sold at the entrance and fresh printed paper. The school hub was as loud as that of the nearby streets where the notes awaited the final burning. In Marina's mind, what had happened the night before still resonated. They had spent hours helping Ben prepare his model, adjusting cables and reviewing charts. Harry had surprised them both when he appeared with a screwdriver in his hand, kneeling to fix a piece. "Let me help," he had said. And although the phrase seemed simple to Marina, it sounded like an unexpected gesture. Now, upon entering the Institute's pavilion, Harry walked beside them, suited but without a tie. With a contained expression that revealed more nerves than pride, Ben, dressed in a light shirt and simple pants, carefully placed the device on the table of his stand. It was a heart monitoring system designed to record heartbeats in real time and project them onto a screen. Marina approached and whispered to him, "Remember to speak slowly, honey. Everyone wants to understand you." Harry placed a hand on the boy's shoulder and added, "You're ready. Trust what you've created." Ben nodded, although the blush on his cheeks betrayed him. The teachers and judges began to tour the projects. One of them, A man with a white beard and round glasses stopped in front of Ben and read the poster. Cardiac monitoring in adolescence with hereditary risk. He looked up. Are you the test subject? Ben took a deep breath. Yes, I have the same heart condition my father had. The murmur of the other students nearby quieted, and several eyes turned to Harry, who was standing behind with moist eyes. The boy continued, I created this device to record my heartbeats. The idea is that any teenager can have real-time monitoring, receive alerts, and avoid complications. With steady hands, he connected the sensor to his wrist, and on the screen, the irregular green lines of his heart rate appeared. This is what beats inside me, and this system can help many others not live in fear. The judge sex-changed looks of interest. One of them asked, and how is this project financed? Ben shrugged. With recycled parts and hours of programming. But I believe that with support it could go further. Harry took a step forward. I know what it's like to live with that condition, he said in a grave voice. And I know what it means to do it alone. My son will not be alone. This project deserves support, and I am willing to back it. The audience stirred, surprised by the confession. Harry rarely spoke publicly about anything personal, much less his health. Marina looked at him with a mixture of astonishment and caution. There was a sincere tone in his words that she didn't remember from the past years. Ben looked at him sideways, incredulous at first, but then a spark of pride crossed his face. The device began to show the boy's heartbeats live. The screen flickered with green lines, and the auditorium filled with spontaneous applause. Students came closer, teachers nodded in approval, and some parents commented in low voices that the project had a future. Marina felt her heart fill with warmth. For the first time, she saw her son not just as a teenager fighting a disease, but as a young man capable of transforming his fragility into strength. The judges congratulated Ben and asked him to send the project to a national competition. The boy smiled shilly. It will, he replied. But the most important thing for me is that this invention works and helps. Harry squeezed Hisson's shoulder with contained pride, and Marina, standing to the side, shed a silent tear. As the afternoon progressed, other students came to congratulate him. One told him, "Your project is the best I've seen." Another added, "If you patent it, I'll help you with the design." Ben laughed with a new joy, as if the weight he was carrying had suddenly become lighter. Marina took a photo with her old camera, capturing that moment of intimate victory. Outside, the streets of Valencia roared with the explosion of firecrackers. The sky began to darken and the colored lights reflected in the institute's windows. The science fair continued. But for the three of them, that small stand was the true epicenter of the day. Ben smiled and whispered for the first time, I felt like we were a team. The final scene, the Mediterranean Sea, shone at sunset when Marina and Harry walked together along the promenade. The air brought a salty and fresh smell mixed with the distant smoke of the phallus that were already lighting up the streets downtown. The terraces were full of tourists who shared paellas and toasted with glasses of wine while street guitarists played soft songs that mixed with the voices of the crowd. The city was alive, but for the two of them that walk was a refuge, a pause after so many storms. After the science fair, the tension had given way to a beginning of trust. Ben's project had received applause and recognition, and Harry had been there, standing, applauding with contained tears. Marina had seen it, and had felt that something in him had truly changed. Now they walked side by side in silence, listening only to the murmur of the waves. Marina was the first to speak. I never thought I would live to see this, she said with a sigh. Harry looked at her, his tie in his pocket and his jacket over his shoulder. Me neither, but I'm glad this day has come. The Valencia Maritime Promenade was slowly lighting up with the tall lampposts, and the first lights of the fireworks were reflecting in the water. Marina stopped for a moment in front of the iron railing and rested her hands. Harry, she said in a low voice, it's been 15 years. 15 years in which I raised our son alone. I'm not telling you this to reproach you, but because I need to say it. Harry stopped next to her, his eyes fixed on the sea. I know, and it hurts more than I can explain. I thought that if I built an empire, if I accumulated power and money, everything else would come on its own. But I was wrong. Marina looked at him intently. He doesn't need an empire. He needs you. Not as a businessman, not as a millionaire. As a father. Harry lowered his gaze and nodded. I've lost too many years, but I want the ones that are left. I want to be there when he wakes up in the morning, when he goes for his checkups, when he presents new projects. I don't want to continue being a ghost in his life. Marina listened in silence, evaluating every word. It wasn't easy to trust after so much pain, but in Harry's voice, there was a sincerity she had not known before. Suddenly they heard light footsteps behind them. Ben appeared running with a wide smile and his hair disheveled by the wind. He was carrying a small backpack and raised his hand to greet them. "Sorry for taking so long. I stayed talking with my friends from the institute," he said with joy. Marina smiled when she saw him and held out her arms. "Come here," she said. Ben came closer and hugged his mother first, then looked at his father with shyness. "What were you talking about?" he asked. Harry looked at him with tenderness. "About you," he answered. "About everything we want to do right from now on." The boy laughed softly. "Then I hope the list is long." He took a few steps ahead and pointed to a small nearby restaurant where waiters were setting up tables outdoors. "What do you say we have dinner together at home? We can order something to go." Marina looked at him in surprise. "At home?" Ben nodded. "Yes, the three of us as a family. It doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be ours." Harry took a deep breath as if those words were the greatest gift he could receive. "I think that's a wonderful idea." On their way to their restaurant, they crossed paths with several groups carrying cardboard and wooden figures toward the burning. Then Enotes waited in the squares, ready to be burned in the midst of the merriment. Achild approached Ben and offered him a small rocket. "Do you want to light it?" he asked with innocence. Ben looked at his mother, who smiled and nodded. Harry lit the fuse, and together they watched the rocket go up to the sky and explode in a green flash. The three of them laughed in unison, and for an instant they seemed to forget everything they had suffered. In the restaurant, Lucia appeared unexpectedly. She had finished her shift at the hospital and decided to stop by to see them. She didn't want to interrupt, she said kindly, but she had to tell them something. "The important thing is not just the medicine, but how you take care of each other." Marina hugged her with gratitude, and Harry shook her hand with respect. "Thank you for being there in the most difficult moments," he added. Lucia smiled. "Now the moments will be better, I know." She said goodbye with an affectionate gesture towards Ben, who responded with a shy smile. With bags of food in their hands, they returned to the car parked nearby. The Valencia sky exploded in fireworks, and the crowd gathered in the streets for the last night of the phallus. The glare illuminated the faces of the three of them, who walked together as if they had recovered something lost. Marina stopped for a moment and watched her son between them. "I never imagined this moment," she confessed. Ben took her hand. "Me neither, but here we are." The promenade vibrated with guitars, voices, and the applause of the people. The notes began to burn in different squares, and the smoke ascended toward the sky, taking with it a whole year of memories. Marina thought that maybe that was a perfect symbol. The fire that burns the past, the light that opens a different future. As they walked, Harry looked at Marina with seriousness. "I know it won't be easy. There will be arguments, there will be bad days, but I want us to try." Marina looked at him, and then she looked at Ben, who smiled with teenage innocence. "Maybe we won't have a perfect ending," she said in a low voice, "but we will have a new beginning." The phallus exploded in the sky with a fireworks display that illuminated the entire city. The sea reflected the colored flashes, and the crowd applauded while the figures burned. For the three of them, that spectacle was more than a party. It was a sign that the past could be left behind, and that the family, broken for years, could be rebuilt with patience, truth, and love. The echo of the fireworks faded over the Mediterranean Sea, and in that final glow, the image of a family that, after years of silence and wounds, had found a new way to walk together, was etched. It was not an easy return, nor an immediate reconciliation, but each shared step on the promenade, each word spoken with frankness, opened a different path from that of pride and loneliness. In Ben's eyes, the trust he had never felt before shone, and in those of Marina and Harry, the will to repair lost time was recognized, even if they knew that no promise could completely erase the absent years.